Hey everybody, welcome back to Oopsy Daisy. We are in part 4 of our Addiction Unfiltered series. If you remember from part 3, we ended where Emily and Rob got evicted from their apartment. They are homeless and they are headed to Minneapolis with nothing but the clothes on their back and a backpack. Let's dive into part 4 and see what happens next.
We ended up getting into, and there's homeless shelters in Minneapolis. Thankfully got accepted into, it's called Simpson Housing. It's over in South Minneapolis. And it's a co-ed place. So we knew we were going to be able to be there together. And so we moved in there, and it was, that's actually a lot of the shelters are you can sleep there, but you have to be gone during the day. This place you could be there 24/7.
Can you use there? Do they allow that, or do they turn a blind eye?
They turn a blind eye. Okay. 90% of people in there are using. And of course, a blessing, but really just made it a lot easier to just keep doing what we're doing and still have, a place to be at night. And it was we didn't really want to hang out there all day. We had to go make money. And
how do you make money? What do you do?
This is embarrassing to say, but it's the truth. We ended up signing please help. Anything helps. Hold a sign.
Really?
Yep. And that was another thing that's crazy, because it's the streets are the streets, and it's that's a thing that people do, but it was as soon as we got into that shelter, it's just people talk, and especially if people are using, then it's you get new connects, and people are always telling you, oh, this is how you can make money. And so we started doing that. Just looking back on it, it's just really, really sad, that, I lowered myself to that, but...
was it embarrassing while you were doing it too?
Yeah, but it's and this is just me being honest, because we would go together, right? And so we would try different areas, and it's you kind of got to figure out where people are actually going to give you money, or where people stop at a lot. Literally at that point, I'm homeless. My family, I don't get to see my son anymore. I have nobody to answer to. The only thing I care about is getting high and making money. I would be in a sports bra and short shorts out there, holding a sign, and we'd go out there at, 10, 11 in the morning and do it until we got enough to get dope for the day. And so we would be on opposite sides of the bridge or whatever, and Rob would always get maybe $10 in literally it started to be very apparent
yes.
The fact that I was a female, and if I I said sexualize myself and objectified myself, people will respond to that, because there was times that I would get $100 in 2 hours. I feel that's why at this point in my life, I don't give those people money, because I know that, I said, I would guess 90% of the people that are doing that, yes, they're going to use it on drugs or alcohol.
Okay,
they just are.
That weighs heavily on my heart, because too, I'm as a Christian, I'm what do I do?
And that's why, obviously this is a podcast, so I feel I do just need to speak to that. If anything, because people would give us water, or give us some food, a granola bar or something. And it's that's stuff that I'll do. Yeah. Cause it's if you are homeless out there struggling, you need water and food. Mm-hmm. But just money, or people, I got a club card a couple times, cause that's gonna help, and that's gonna let them actually take care of, just the basic needs that you have as a human. Mm-hmm. But money is gonna just go to something that it shouldn't, for that's a majority of the time. So that would be my PSA. Mm-hmm. Especially knowing from experience that, anything but actual cash, because it's going to go to drugs or alcohol for a majority of the people. We ended up going to the methadone clinic and getting on methadone. So that means we were taking methadone every day in the morning, and that's supposed to, keep you out of withdrawal and keep your cravings under control. Once we were homeless, we had to set up, you get med cabs through your insurance, where it's a free ride. They pick you up. So, every single morning we would get picked up together to go to the clinic. And so we were going to going to get methadone, but we were still using on top of it, which is also very common and sad. That, it's supposed to be something to keep people off drugs, but it's just something that in case you can't get dope that day, at least you won't be sick, and just the the shelter in general. And it was like they gave you lunch, or excuse me, breakfast and dinner. Like they served breakfast and dinner there, but it was terrible food. You know what I mean? So we were like shoplifting food a lot. Like, and you know, I was just stealing like almost every day, going to Target. Like on the whole lifestyle is just crazy and really, you know, it is really ugly, but it just becomes like, it's like a hustle, you know, and you just start playing like people and places however you can, like, and you just become really like selfish. And
did a part of you like the hustle, like being busy and like kind of the chase and like figuring out like, okay, then we gotta go here and now I'm gonna do this, like, or was it awful the whole time?
No, I did. And that's like, I'll admit that. And like, I've been able to admit that there is, you know, I've always been like an adrenaline junkie kind of a thing. But then I also, you know, have always loved, I just love like the city. And I love like being in the, like kind of like the danger of like being in the hood and like, yeah, like running around all the time and having, you know, having to money and like hustle and figure it out. And like, it's like a chase, you know, it's like the chase. And so,
and coming out victorious, like when your back's against the wall and it matters and you come through for each other and yourself.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm sure that's like a dopamine hit in and of itself.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, and so that's where like our relationship deepened. And you know, if you're homeless on the streets hustling like that with somebody every day and you're in love with each other, like it's gonna, you know, just deepen things for us. And like, you know, he already at that point was my best friend. You know, I felt like my soulmate, my whatever, but he was like my other half and my partner in crime. And it's like, we always had each other, you know, it's like we always split everything and did everything together. And we had a phone between the two of us, because obviously you got to call the dope dealer to be able to get dope. So we had a phone, and that was Rob's mom was still paying for his phone. And so we shared a phone, but like at least once a week I would call and talk to him. And that was like something that, you know, through all my times in treatment and even like that being out on the street, it's like, I always made sure to like check in with him, and he knew that I was struggling. That was kind of always like the narrative that my family and stuff told him. And like at that point, you know, he was like, well, yeah, what is this, 2021? So he's like 12, 13, you know, and it's like, so he's obviously able to understand. But I, at that point, especially just in the place I was in, wasn't able to talk honestly with him. I've since been able to do that. But, you know, it was just more like just checking in on him, let him hear my voice and let me hear how he's doing and let him tell me about his day and just things like that. But it was, like I said, my parents and my sister, you know, told him that, you know, your mom's struggling. And I had explained that I had an addiction to him in the time that I was clean. So like, he knew that I was an addict, you know, so obviously he understood, but like, he didn't know that I was, you know, in a homeless shelter and out on the street, you know, he didn't know those kinds of specifics, but I do just always remember making sure to call him at least once a week. And, you know, like you said, the chase and the victory of it all and stuff. But then of course there's days that like things go south and things happen. Like, you know, we'd get jacked, like take all the money that we had, take $80 from us. And like that shit happened. That's the kind of shit that happens on the street too, you know, and just like, or you get bunk stuff, like fake, you know, stuff like, or super cut or whatever, not to go into specifics about dope, but you know, it's like, there's definitely plenty of days and times that are terrible.
Did you see violence?
Yes. Yeah. I was, like never shot at, but around shootings, like seeing shootings, you know, and obviously like seeing guns all the time, but never like being shot at, but definitely seeing violence. And this kid, he was young too. He was probably like 18, 19 years old. And, you know, you heard gunshots pop off and all of a sudden he was face down on the concrete and like had been shot. And it was, oh my gosh. And I didn't expect to like tell this, but, it was one of those things where like his girlfriend or whoever it was like screaming and the cops wouldn't let her come by them. And took forever for the ambulance to come, and like we watched him die. Oh, and that was just one of the, because of course he was a black guy, and like I saw face to face and like with my own eyes like how real that stuff is, like where there was no urgency to get him help, and like they wouldn't even let his loved one, like who's he might die in this moment, you're not even gonna let her be right next to him. Like it was crazy, Amanda. Wow. It was so sad, and I wish I didn't see, and that's where it's like that stuff should have scared me, but it almost is like you become like numb to it kind of. So then it was like fall, and so we had been out there since 3 months, and we started talking about how we should go to treatment. We of course kind of took our sweet time doing that, but it like became a conversation like, okay, like we need to figure out when we're going to stop, and we'll both go into treatment together at the same time. And we ended up doing that in October. The thing is though, is we were still going to the methadone clinic, right? So we still saw each other every day while we were in treatment. So we would like meet up there and very enmeshed with each other. And it wasn't like, we weren't like, okay, we need to split up and figure this out. It's like, we're going to do it together kind of a thing, which isn't good or healthy to do, obviously. So we would even like at the clinic, if you go downstairs, they have like this exercise room and like these random rooms that like are open. So we'd go down there like to have sex.
You did not.
Yes, we did. I know, right?
Gosh.
And so, yeah. And that because it was like, oh, nope, neither of us wanted to go that long without that. And it just was like, I was in treatment for like 2 months, but we were going to be in totally different towns when we went to sober living after. He was staying in St. Paul, and I was going to go down to Apple Valley because, again, of course, is like always my priority. And it's like if there was, a chance like that things were going to get better, a chance that things were going to get better, I wanted to be close to him, to be able to see him. And I missed him. And at that point, it had been a long time since I had seen him. Like 6 months, almost 6 months. Wow. I hadn't seen him. And that was something while I was in treatment. It was just so hard for me. And I would call him and hang up and just cry for just hours in my room, really, really hard for me. And so, once I had even a little bit of clean time, it was like, okay, I need to, show up for him and prioritize being a mom. So I did go to Apple Valley, got into a sober house there. And he was in St. Paul, like I said, but we, of course, were still together and still seeing each other at the clinic and stuff. But I started outpatient. And at that point, like I knew how much, a pros and cons list, how many cons there were to my relationship with Rob. I became like well aware of that. But just like the way that I felt like I couldn't be without him,
Okay, that was my question. Quickly just define codependency, because I think we throw the term around a lot, but I don't think a lot of people really know. So like nutshell it. I mean,
So, well, I think like you can be codependent. There's kind of two definitions, but like it's either like you feel responsible for somebody else, like you kind of get like your worth out of like being somebody else's person, like playing a role in someone's life. Like you don't prioritize yourself, you prioritize other people. That is, one definition of codependency. And it's also like that you can't be alone. Like you can't be alone, and you're always seeking some kind of outside love and like outside validation, and like you need other people to feel okay.
Yep.
And so that was something, you go from inpatient and then you do outpatient. That's like the natural, way that the treatment process goes. So I was in outpatient while I was in Apple Valley, and I told my counselor, I was like, okay, I need to work on my codependency. And I did. And I really, really focused on that. And really just kind of dug into, as we've heard in my story, it's like, it goes way, way back. Me just, getting in a relationship and it just being all about that person, and, things going really quickly and getting super serious right away. And, it had just been so long since I had actual friends. Like it was sad. And like, I just remember being like, oh my gosh, at that point I'm 29, and it's like I had no real like group of friends, because it had just been all relationships, or people I was using with and whatever. So, that very much became my focus. And, I did do a lot of really good work, and I remember it did start kind of, impacting my conversations with Rob. And like, he knew that that was something that I was focusing on. And I was like, we can't, it was necessary for us to kind of have some sort of separation, and that was hard for me to kind of try to set those boundaries. And he also, didn't receive it the best, and so that just started causing a lot of kind of back and forth in us. And just, again, that, me really trying to stand firm and like what my counselors and therapists were telling me and what I felt like God was telling me. And especially that, like, speaking of that, and, I started just being really into my faith and worship music constantly. And like, just the Holy Spirit just started reminding me, like, I'm your first love, like, I'm your first love. And just that whole thing. And like, whatever that scripture is, it says you've forsaken your first love. And, that just started hitting home for me so strong, like in such a spiritual way. And I remember, because at that point, Rob did know who Jesus was. And I remember just telling him, like, I was like, Jesus is my number one. Like, you can't be my number one anymore, And like, I still love you and I want you to be okay. But like, I need to put him first, and we need to be healthy for us to be together, Yep. And I think I had matured enough to that point too, where it was like, I knew that we couldn't have a relationship if we weren't healthy. And like, at that point, we only had a couple months clean, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I ended up getting a job. I would take the bus up and we'd meet each other halfway and, see each other at the clinic. And he ended up coming to visit me at the sober house. He kept calling it slipped. So like, he would like confess he used, and he would always have an excuse. He'd be like, oh yeah, my roommate at the sober house, he's using. And so just a huge like red flag and like warning, where it was like, okay, no, he's going right back into this, Mm-hmm. I can't let that happen. It was very hard for me to not give him more chances. It just was, because I was still so in love with him. And so here's the big party. Ready? We're into the winter now. It's like February. We had been having sex at the clinic, but then also, in person a couple times or whatever. And I was not on birth control. I was late on my period. It took me, a couple days to take a test, and I finally did, and it was positive.
What are your feelings in that moment when you see a positive test?
Oh my gosh. Because of the way that things were with us, and at that time, it was fear. It almost was like, this is happening again, like at the wrong time.
Okay. And
I feel like that was my initial kind of response, where it was like, of course, I always wanted more babies. I always wanted more children, and so it was in that place where it was like, when I was getting, trying to prioritize God and, just praying so much more and trying to listen to the Holy Spirit, it started becoming something that God was stating to me, very clear, not an audible voice, but just that, that still small voice, that he's not the one. Oh. And I just kept trying to ignore it. And I was wrestling with God, because I was like, come on, Lord, like, if he gets clean, like, then maybe I'd be praying like, would that be okay then, Lord? Like, God was very much telling me that, in the months leading up to me getting pregnant. So I feel like that was another thing that, it just was so confusing and scary, and I didn't know how to feel, and I told him right away. And, I remember like we both cried, and he, didn't have any children up to this point, and he'd always wanted kids too. And so I do remember like him being excited, felt like this was a sign, like, for us to get better and be together. And that just was, it just was such a hard time for me, just emotionally and spiritually, and like listening to his response, and like wanting to believe that, but then also knowing like what I knew, like, that God was telling me he's not the one for me. He was very much, wanting to know how I felt and what I was thinking. And it was like, I don't know. And I remember just telling him, like, I just need like some time. Like, I need to, decide how I feel. Like, I can't keep talking to you every day and talking about this, because it was very clear that, like, assuming it's like, we're going to keep this baby. I just was still wanting direction from God, and like wanting to really, let God lead me in this, especially because I was so conflicted and just had so many different ways that, my heart and my head and my spirit, I feel like we're just all kind of going in just different directions. And
was abortion ever on the table? Ever an option?
No.
Okay.
Not for me.
Yeah.
And, of course, I've known a lot of women that have had abortions, and but for me, I could never. I just didn't feel like I could ever.
Can you be pregnant and take methadone?
Once you've been on methadone for a while, it is an opiate. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like it's a full opiate, where Suboxone is another, and this is just kind of PSA, people that don't know this, like for medication assisted treatment for opiate use, there's Suboxone and methadone. Suboxone is a partial opiate. So it has a partial opiate, to keep you from getting withdrawal and having cravings, but it's partly just like a blocker where it keeps you from being able to get high. Methadone's not that way, and you can get high on it, and your tolerance will just go up and up, kind of a thing. Once I found out I was pregnant, and of course shared that with the clinic right away, that was my concern, and they told me that I couldn't get off of it because it would put the baby through withdrawal, which would be fatal for the baby.
What?
Yep.
So you have to knowingly be on an opiate so that you don't hurt your baby, even though the opiates are hurting your baby.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that just sad? So another reason why, I was so emotional and so just torn up in so many different ways, and just, it became a really just dark, scary time, because it was just it's okay, so now I have to be on this, and and it just felt like, how can this be, but of course the doctors there at the clinic, reassured me, because it would be fatal to a baby if you have such a methadone tolerance up to that point, like I did. I'd been on it for 6 months or more. That I couldn't even taper off of it, but I was already 8 weeks along when I found out.
Oh, wow.
So at that point they told me that, because of just everything that happens in your body when you're pregnant, that I was going to need more methadone as the pregnancy progressed.
Oh my gosh.
So they made me aware of that and kind of tried to prepare me. And that was something that then, Rob had, of course, huge feelings about too, and, hated that. And we went into the doctor there at the clinic together, and, just all those conversations, with the doctors and with the professionals and everything. And then with each other, it was something that, was really, really hard for both of us. At this point, Rob sadly continued to struggle. So then it just became just so many fights with us, and just so much just deep, just crazy emotional things, because I was of course my response was how the fuck are you doing this? I'm pregnant with our baby, especially when you claim to be so excited about this baby, why would you be doing this, and at that point, I was 3 months along. I was still just trying to go to work. With this pregnancy, I had super bad morning sickness, all day. It was bad. So yeah, I was just trying to stick out going to work and still make it to group, because I was still an outpatient at that time, and really trying to use the support of my counselor, and Marchish, I still hadn't told my parents. And it just started being something that, I don't remember who first brought it up. It was probably my counselor, about the options. Adoption got brought up, didn't bring up to Rob right away, just because, like I said, with how difficult our conversations and him using and everything, I just was realizing, and I felt like God was really kind of giving me that reassurance, where it's I'm pregnant with this baby, and it's my, in charge and able to decide what needs to happen, on my own, kind of a thing. I didn't really think of that. For whatever reason, I didn't think of that in the beginning. It was just about how things were going to go. Am I going to be alone, or is Rob going to get it together? And I didn't bring that piece up to Rob. I just remember really kind of giving him an ultimatum. Don't expect to be in my life or this baby's life if you're going to be using, and I started throwing things out like that to him. because of how bad things were. And, you know, because I knew how my family felt about him, that was another big piece where it's like, I knew I had to talk to my parents, right? And like, I knew that once they found out that I was pregnant with Rob's baby, that they would not be happy about that at all. So I did finally call an adoption agency because I just wanted to like talk to someone, right? And it was like, I wasn't making a decision, but I was like, okay, I at least owe it to myself to like talk to somebody or whatever. And so, you know, I had a really good conversation with her and just kind of shared like the situation and everything, and told her that I hadn't told my family yet. And so she was like, I think that's really important for you to do, kind of a thing. And in April, so I was about 4 months along, I told my parents. The consensus was that they were not going to help me again. And I remember that being very much like, again, like we already did this, you know, we've been helping to raise his whole life up to this point. Like, we aren't going to take on another baby. So if you know, are going to keep the baby, it's going to be on you. Yours. Of course, they wanted to know how I was going to tell, because it's like, you know, I'm going to start showing soon. And that was like the concern. And like, you know, and I am very grateful that they were able to put their emotions aside enough to, you know, want to support me in talking to, and like, it kind of became like I talked to my sister too. They almost kind of decided, the three of them, that like we should tell him all together, but they didn't want to do that right until I decided what was going to happen. Yep. Which also made sense. I ended up telling Rob. I sent him an email, I remember, because I had blocked him at that point. I couldn't handle it. And it also was something that I knew I did not need to be in the mix of him using and everything. And I didn't feel like he was himself. Said that, you know, I've reached out to an adoption counselor, and like, I'm really considering this, and like, we need to discuss it, and just all my reasons why. And he was very much against it. Like, I remember he cried and he was like, I'm sorry that I'm messing up. Like, I'll do better. And so it just was, made it a lot harder. And so it was something that I really had to sit and pray about and think about for weeks. So I talked to the adoption counselor again, and just kind of over time, and as the days went by, I found, like, in the midst of all this, and like how just emotionally exhausted and just everything I was, like how confused I felt, I felt like clarity and peace in my spirit. Yes. Knowing that that's what I'm supposed to do is place the baby for adoption. Okay, and here's what's wild too, and I don't mean to break in, but I was, as you talked about getting pregnant, I'm like, okay, all life comes from God. Yes. God allowed that baby to be conceived. Yes. And I just asked myself, Lord, why would you do that? Like, why these two people in this situation? Yep. But as you're telling this story, and I'm seeing you gain clarity over things, set boundaries for the first time, deal with codependency issues because of this baby, I'm like, holy cow. I know, I'm seeing like the steps that you're taking in a totally new direction that throughout your whole story had not been where you had headed. And he was so present. And it also was kind of like, I remember it being, you know, giving me some sort of peace, and kind of, like realizing like this baby was obviously meant to be born. And it almost like gave me like a reasoning behind why I felt so strongly about Rob, and like looking back on everything we'd been through, and like why I, you know, couldn't let go of him and whatever. And like, I feel like God really kind of like gave me that assurance, and like that kind of just that answer that like, you know, there was something beautiful that was going to come out of it, you know, which really was amazing. And like, I was then able to like see it not as something that was like breaking my heart, but it really like prepared me to handle that and like make the decision like with a peace, and like be able to see it for like the beauty that it is, you know. Oh my gosh, isn't that so like God too? Yes. That I'm not gonna do something that's gonna rip you apart and tear you apart and leave you that way. Yes. I'm going to make beauty from the ashes, and I'm going to give you something good in the midst of all this. That's this whole freaking podcast is Oopsy Daisy, the mess and the dirt of your life, the daisies and the beautiful things that the Lord grows from those awful places. Amen. Yes, absolutely. Rob did go to the doctor with me, and we found out the sex of the baby. This was before, before I even brought up the adoption. But so we did know that she was a girl. But so I started the process with the adoption agency, and I went through Adoption Minnesota. She asked me if there's any specific things that I was looking for in a couple. I felt very empowered and just put me in just a really good headspace. So I wanted them to be Christian, and then I was really kind of wanting them to already have another child because I wanted to be able to give her a sibling. They have all these couples, and they have it's like brochures on every couple. So she started out with giving me, I think it was like 12 couples, which, just reading them, like they were really just clearly they took a lot of time on it, and you just could feel like their desire for a child in those pamphlets, and like in the way that they, just the things that they said in it. And so that was just really, it just was very emotional. And, again, something that like shifted my perspective to being like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to bless somebody with a baby, and like really clicked in me, like looking through those pamphlets for the first time. That's what all of them would say. Like, we would be so grateful. We would be eternally grateful to you. And like, that's something that like I'll have for the rest of my life, knowing that I blessed someone with a child, which a lot of them, a majority of them, have fertility issues or for whatever reason can't have their own kids, Of course, it was like I wanted to find the perfect person. And I just remember knowing and trusting that God was going to just lead me to the right people, right? And so I remember like praying before, like I looked at them, and so it was actually really crazy. And like, just God is so good and like so cool that it was like out of those 12, it's like I put like 6 aside, like right away. What I had to do was pick my top 3. And then I would be able to have like a video call with them. I just remember getting on the video call, and it was like almost like within 5 minutes that I was like, oh no, like this isn't it, Yeah. That wasn't going to be it. So then I told my adoption counselor I wanted to talk to the next people. Everything in their pamphlet was just like perfect. Like to me, they just sounded amazing, and they looked so cute and whatever, So I was like very, very excited about them. I knew in the middle of our conversation, I was like, this is it. This is them. Just my spirit and the Holy Spirit was just like covering me, and just felt like perfectly clear that this was the right choice and this is what was meant to happen. Messaged Rob because I wanted him to obviously be able to be involved in that decision. Yeah, I ended up talking to the adoption counselor, and we set up an in-person visit. They were incredible and just so warm, and our personalities just got along so well. And I feel like what was also important to me in deciding was like mirrored like how me and Rob are, like if we're sober, like when me and Rob are healthy, that's like making me want to cry too, because like that was like what I was like looking for, because it's like I don't want someone who's like way different than us to raise our daughter, that just didn't feel right. They're absolutely like if me and Rob are, our best selves, and walking with the Lord, like that's how they looked, and that's who they were. It was just amazing, and like God is so good, like I said. So my adoption counselor had told me that like if the in-person visit goes well, like I can say, tell them, like end them by asking if they'll be the adoptive parents. And so that's what I did. And oh my gosh. Yep, I did it. They of course just tears, and all 3 of us crying, and just they were so excited and so happy. And so I was like 6 months along, I think. So I'm on methadone. The doctors at the clinic, as well as my OBGYN that I was seeing, started talking to me about that, explaining that, she's gonna be born dependent on methadone. It took a lot of time and just a lot of faith, I think, and just believing that, God wouldn't let this happen, like if she wasn't going to be okay. And I just had to believe that and trust that. Thought I was going to give birth at Fairview in Burnsville. So like we ended up going to a meeting with the NICU nurses there. They didn't, obviously can't tell how long of a period she's going to be in the NICU, but she's going to have to go to the NICU to get kind of like tapered off, see how the withdrawal goes and everything. So, and I know how it ends up. So it's like I can talk about it without getting emotional, but I mean, it was something that it hurt my heart and broke my heart that, you know, my addiction was gonna affect my daughter like that. Wow. I hated it so much. Yep. Me and the adoptive got like just so close, and they were also really understanding and supportive of like me and Rob's relationship, and they very much wanted, you know, him to be in her life like as much as they wanted me to be in her life. We decided in the adoption plan that we wanted to have 5 visits a year. We had it set up for at least once a month pictures and updates, and 5 visits a year. So I felt really good about that, you know, and it was something that just the whole process and, you know, the support that I had from my counselor and from them, the adoptive parents. And, you know, it just, I felt really at peace the whole time that I was doing it. You know, once Rob was, you know, knew the plan and knew that I had chose the parents and everything, we really wanted to pick her name. We decided that we would love, and they were like, absolutely, like we would love to honor you guys in that. I felt so grateful for them, right? But they were just as grateful to me, you know, because I was going to be giving them like their child. So it was just really crazy, just that whole dynamic. It didn't seem hard at all for them to say like, yeah, we would love to like do that for you. And, you know, it was just such a special, like beautiful moment. So cool. So, you know, we got to start calling her that then at the end of my pregnancy, and just really special. And I prayed over her so much, especially, you know, with the whole methadone thing and like knowing, you know, what was going to happen after she was born. Like I prayed over that baby girl so much, you know. And, I guess I left out when we did end up talking to my parents and sister were very grateful that I was making the choice I was making, of course, and, you know, supported that and thought it was the best decision. And, Carter took it like very well. His initial reaction was, are you gonna keep it? You're not gonna get an abortion, right? That's what he said. He was like, you're not gonna get an abortion, right? And so I ended up, you know, talking about the adoption and just explaining it. And, you know, he was old enough and he really understood. And that whole conversation went really well. And, you know, my family was very supportive of me, like during my pregnancy, you know, and at that point I was seeing them a lot. And obviously, you know, 6-7 months pregnant, I was big at the time. And so it was, you know, it was like kind of a hard thing. And like, it's, my mom especially had like a really hard time with it too. Like knowing that I was going to have a baby girl, but, you know, she was going with other people despite knowing it was the right choice. So she was due, November 7th, and I was all set up, like everything was set up for the hospital. And my family, that's one thing, like couldn't is the way that they described it, you know, be there. Me and Rob wanted to be in the room together when she was born. He came around just in time enough for us to really like have it the way that we would want it, you know, in any way that we can. I had an appointment set up for the 28th of October. And so I woke up that morning at like 6 a.m. with contractions. I was ready to do this, you know, and like God was just so like strong in me or during that entire pregnancy, you know, that I just was ready for it. So I end up getting there, and I get on the bed and I text Rob and I'm like, I'm here, like I'm in labor. The doctor comes in and I'm at a 10.
Oh, okay.
Isn't
like
that
the baby is falling out?
Isn't that crazy? And like I had just drove myself there. Like really, I was like, I might get an epidural, like that, you know, making that whole decision. I was like, once you're at a 10, that's way too late. So I remember God, like I felt like God kind of like smiled at me in that moment, because he was like, you can do this. Like,
right?
She's coming. She's ready. And you don't need an epidural. Like, you know, you're gonna get this.
I love too, though, how you spent your whole life up to this point numbing out really tough things. And here you are in a very tough moment, and the Lord Lord designs it, so you are going to feel all of it.
Oh my gosh.
I think it's beautiful.
It is beautiful. I love that you said it like that. I had never really thought about it like that.
You got to feel every part of it.
And I did. You know, they're wanting me to push and nobody was there yet. And so I kind of half-ass pushed. And I really did. I'm not kidding, Amanda. And of course, I mean, I'm in labor. You know what it's like to give birth. But I was like, okay, well, I don't want her to come yet. So I'm like, you know.
Just pushing.
Isn't that hilarious? It really was. And, you know, of course I'm dying. It's but I was like, I refuse to have her before anyone's here. So thankfully Rob gets there, and within, I think it was 20 minutes later, she was born. 11:59.
Wow.
Yep. And it really could not have gone better. It was so beautiful, you know, and she was perfect. So the other thing, you know, because of the methadone, she was expected to be smaller. She looked good, in all my ultrasounds and everything, but they knew that she was, you know, a little small, which was kind of expected. So they didn't want me to worry about that. But she was 5'15", so she was almost 6 pounds.
Yeah.
And she just was so beautiful. And another thing that I had decided, which this makes me emotional, but I really wanted to. Well, I made the decision that I was going to for sure breastfeed and pump for them. Yeah, that was something that was very much something I wanted to do. And like I said, played into the whole, I want to do as much as I can, how I would if she was going to be mine, you know? I was going to decide in the moment, whether or not I wanted to put her at my breast or not, but I ended up doing it because it just was so natural, you know? And it's you can't explain that unless you've been a mom, but it did not matter that she wasn't gonna be mine physically. It's I just gave birth to her. And so so I breastfed her for the first 2 days in there, and it was, you know, and they were so, of course they came in to see her right away, but they were so respectful of just our time with her, you know, because they knew it was going to be so short. Rob was there with me the whole time. He spent the night with me that first night, and you know, I just took all the videos and all the pictures that I could of her, you know, and we both did, and it was hard, but at the same time it wasn't, you know. I just feel God was so, I have to absolutely give it all to God. He just gave me so much strength during that time, and just really let me just soak it in, you know, and I knew it was going to be so hard, but it's I didn't feel any desire to kind of you know, shut it off. I wanted to just feel it fully, like you said. And I'm so glad that I did. You know, after the first day, and then you normally get released from the hospital, she was going to go into the NICU, and so they, you know, just we're going to be checking her, you know, they taper her, and they're giving it to her every however many hours and stuff, depending on how she's doing with symptoms. And and I just wanted to be there as much as I could. And so, you know, I spent a lot of time there, you know, I was there for the first week, pretty much almost around the clock with them, not around the clock, but during the day, you know, and would go home at night. But I wanted to be I felt I needed to watch out for her. And you know, that was when it did get hard, just knowing that she was going through something, and it was really, really hard for Rob. He did spend that first night for me, but once she went to the NICU, he couldn't handle being there, you know, and he voiced that to me and explained it, where he was I think about how it is for us, when we're dope sick or going through withdrawal, and it just was just really, really icky and hard. And, you know, I'm pumping, so that's crazy. And my mom was a huge, huge, huge support for me. She let me come stay with them. They were really amazing, my family, during that. But, yeah, and you know, I mean, I don't know how postpartum was for you, but along with her being in the NICU, you know, I just was all over the place and couldn't sleep at all. She was in the NICU for a total of 17 days, 2.5 weeks. Yeah. But she was never alone for more than like 20 minutes. You know, it was so special for me to have that. Like, I can't even explain to you. And like, what a blessing. I knew that it was so rare that like a birth mom would have that. And that was something that the nurses and doctors all talked about too, like how much like me being there would help, and like holding her would help, and just all of that, like the mother-child bond and everything. She did amazing. She's so strong, and you know, it just was to be able to watch her, you know, just start smiling and start picking her head up, and just she was so strong. And I talked out loud to her like so much all the time, and you know, played worship music in there, and I brought like a little diffuser in there, and I just was like I literally made it like as comfortable as I could, and like really just like poured my all into her in those times. I really did. They got to take her home, and it was also like super hard. And it was like, there was that, like, it was hard. I was so grateful that I got that time, but it also in a way made it harder to then separate from her, you know? But at that point, like, I realized, that my postpartum was really severe and like really affecting me. So, because I couldn't be on my antidepressant while I was pregnant. That was like, you know, they're not supposed to be on those meds. So I, of course, was supposed to start back on them. But like I really was having a really hard time sleeping. And so I started losing it a little bit. And like my family was really concerned about me. So when I stopped pumping, that's when it like went downhill really, really fast. And the crazy thing is I was listening to worship constantly. Like, I feel like I was like feeling so close to God in a way, but also like not like on like a plane of reality. It's really, really hard to explain.
Like you were like psychosis, like postpartum psychosis.
Yes. So I ended up getting like actually diagnosed with postpartum psychosis. I was like obsessed with worship music though. It's crazy. Like I can't explain it, but I felt like God was like speaking to me always, like speaking to me through the worship music. And you know, which he does, but like I took it to like a whole new level. Just the craziest time period of my life, but also like I really did feel so close to God. Like it's really hard to explain. So I ended up literally got so bad that like I was Sharpieing on like the walls, and I was renting this apartment, right? Yes, Amanda.
Were you like drawing picture? What were you Sharpieing?
Like I would be like writing lyrics, and then I was like thinking about like people that have like passed away, and I would like write like R.I.P. and like writing people's like birth dates down, like numbers and like scripture.
Jeez. Did somebody step in and say you need help, or did you say like I can't do this?
Well, both. I mean, my family was very concerned, like I said, and so you know, they were like, you need to get on some meds or you need to get help. I took myself into like 3 different hospitals in the period of like a month, and there was nothing they could do.
How? That's like a psychiatric condition.
I know, which you would think.
Yeah.
But I promise you, like I went in there and explained the situation. I was like, I'm losing my mind. I've barely slept in like a month, you know, which was all true. And they were like, you know, there's really like not, you can make an appointment with your primary. Yeah.
Oh my
primary.
gosh.
And that was the other thing is like, it was winter, right? So like hospitals, it's like homeless people try to get into the hospitals they do. And like, that's definitely a known thing. And like, so it would be like, you know, they'd have a ton of people in the waiting room, and it would finally get to be my turn. And they would just kind of be like, they like assumed that I was on drugs, or I know I am not okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't even get help from a hospital.
Wow.
I couldn't handle it anymore. Right. And I had like substances, drugs were not a part of this at all.
That was my question was there a thought of I'm going back to heroin? I'm going back to
eventually. So I ended up reaching out to Mel, right? And like she was living in Rochester, and I drove down to see her in Rochester.
Your ex, right?
Yes, my ex. So I go down there, and she clearly can tell that I'm just like not okay. I'm not in any sort of way sane. And for whatever reason, it just overcame me that like I needed to cut all my hair off.
Like a Britney Spears moment.
Yes, Amanda. What? And I've made that joke, but I'm so dead serious. I cannot explain it. Also, I will say that it very much felt like a spiritual, like I was under like a spiritual attack. Of course, it was diagnosed that it was postpartum psychosis, but like I was spiritually, something was happening to me.
Oh my gosh.
And like I literally was grabbing my hair with scissors and cutting it down to my scalp.
Oh
like
my
I didn't
gosh.
just like chop my hair like to my chin. No, I was like, I want all my hair gone. And
you didn't just get bangs.
No.
You went for it.
I didn't go through something and dye my hair.
Yes.
I cut all my hair off.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'm doing this like in her sink in her bathroom, like filling her sink up with my hair. And she was like scared. She's like, Em, what are you doing? That was the crazy thing. Cause I'm like, it's fine. I'm fine. You know, I'm like, it's so much different than like when drugs are, you know, if I'm like under the influence, it was a way different feeling than that. But it's like, I have flashes of like remembering it. But like the only way I can explain it is it's like, I felt like nothing could happen to me. Like I almost felt like invincible in like some weird way. And like just felt like, it's like whatever, like, you know, feeling or whatever overtook me, it's like I was going with that because I somehow felt like God was like leading me in these decisions.
Interesting.
I am so serious. Or I felt like it was a way for like God to just like show how much he was like watching over me, or like I really have never felt so like spiritually awake while also going insane and losing my mind. It was just like such a spiritual thing for me.
Wow.
It was really, really.
I wish I had like a hot take on why that might be, or like some profound thing, but I am like astounded.
I know,
because
right?
God does lead people to do things that maybe seem crazy or seem very out of the ordinary sometimes, and he does speak very clearly. Right. But at what point did your mind take
it's
it,
like,
you know?
Or like, was it the enemy like speaking to me? Like, was it some kind of like demonic oppression? I don't know. And like, I still can't say. Because like I said, the things I was writing and, you know, talking about, and like even, that I would be like sending stuff to Rob all the time. Like, and I was, you know, he was very, very concerned about me too, because he said that I would just like send screenshots of like stuff that I was like looking at my phone, and I was like, you know, everything had like a meaning to me.
Oh.
And like I needed to share it with somebody else. Like, so I was like document my thought process like during it. I would like sit like in my laundry room, feel like I was just like talking to God, or like just having like, I would like sit like in a laundry basket in my laundry room, like with the door shut, like listening to music, and just feel like somehow like, you know, I needed to take this time for God to speak to me. It was insane, Amanda. It really was. But so my family ended up coming to, you know, see me, and like they broke down and cried, sobbed. My dad cried when he saw my hair, like that I had cut because can you imagine? It was a I mean, she shaved her head completely, but mine was like, bald spots. Yeah.
If
like
you would have showed up at the hospital
spots.
Like that in the first time, maybe they would have done something first. Like, I don't mean to make light of it,
for sure. They would have been like, this chick needs to go to psych ward.
Yep.
And so up to that point, drugs I had not used. But it got to the point where I was like, I wanted to sleep so bad. It felt like weeks before I would sleep for like a couple hours.
That's so physically dangerous for your body.
Yeah.
too.
And that was the other thing. And then I was like driving. I would like go for drives, like, and like drive super fast.
You were protected. Like that whole time, man, because your body should have shut down or like fallen asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
He protected you.
Yeah, he did. So it got to the point that I was like, well, I need to get some kind of relief. So I ended up using, and I got heroin. So then I was doing that, you know, on top of still going through the psychosis and everything. Oh, another thing I was doing was having bonfires all the time, because there was a bonfire pit. I was like lighting everything on fire. Oh my
Which
gosh. Also like, but that's like crazy, but I feel like fire has like such a spiritual meaning. Like I would feel like this overwhelming need to just like watch things burn.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you ever unpacked any of that with like a spiritual counselor or like a pastor?
No, not yet, but I really want to.
Can I sit with you?
Yeah.
It's just like, wow.
I know, right? But the landlord ended up coming to see like the Sharpie all over the wall. And they were also like, we don't know what's happening with you, but you got to go. So then it was, that same situation again where I had nowhere to go. And my plan was to get high and then take myself into the hospital again in hopes that like they would hold me and do something with me, right? So I stopped to use in the park in literally downtown Minneapolis. So I'm parked right by this park in downtown Minneapolis. I had the music going and like my battery died, right? Couldn't start my car. Right. And I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm stuck here. And like, I'm not that close to HCMC and it's cold. I don't want to walk. Right. So I was like, okay, well, I can at least start myself a fire in my car. I started putting paper and stuff into my center console, knowing that I'm going to light it on fire. And like a little fire starts. The car that I was driving was the car that I had the whole time that me and Rob were together, and he would steal my car, but he would like steal money from me, like use my ATM card or debit card and get money out and like drive my car up to the cities. And like there was days that like he would be gone, or times that he would be gone for like 2 or 3 days with my car, my car. I mean, so this car, right? This is the car that I'm driving at that time. And like, to me, like it had a lot of like bad. That car just like made me feel like sick and like felt like it like just brought up so much like garbage in me. And so I literally was like, I don't care if burns.
Yeah.
I got anything that I could that was going to actually like light a, make a big enough fire, and lit a fire and got out of my car, Amanda, and went across and sat outside of the restaurant and watched that car light on fire and blow up completely. Blew up my car.
You
on
blew
purpose.
up your car.
Yes.
And watched it burn.
And watched it burn. Watched it burn. A car. Like, have you ever seen a car light on fire and blow up?
Only in the movies.
Exactly.
Did anybody come out and like...
Not long after it blew up, I hear the sirens. The fire truck pulls in. Like, nobody came out of the restaurant. But somebody obviously must have called.
Yeah.
But like, no, nobody came out. And that was another thing. Like, I was in such a crazy mindset, and like not in reality at all, that I was like, took a symbolism from the fact that it was the fire truck was E8, right? And my name's Emily, and I was born on the 8th. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was supposed to blow this car up. I was like, E8, like, yep. This was meant for me. And like, I just blew up my car in the middle of Minneapolis, and like,
there's 2 parts of my brain happening right now. The first one is going, she was truly crazy, crazy. But then the other part of my brain is going, what if it was a sign?
Seriously.
Do you know what I mean? But like,
yeah.
What if
See?
God was like, hey, let's have her burn her past?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I'm so glad. Thank you. Because it was real. It was so real to me. Like,
and God is with you in those moments too. So that's why we'll unpack that, and then you come back on and tell us later.
Yeah, later
what you figured out.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so your car is on fire. They take care of it. Do you make it to HCMC hospital?
Yep, and they say they can't help me. Yeah. Okay. So,
did you tell them you blew up a car?
Yeah.
So the medical system failed you greatly.
They really did. They failed me greatly. They failed me greatly. I remember like one of the nurses was like, well, I don't think you want anyone to know that, because what if you get charged? And I was like, what? I'm like, oh my gosh. So then of course I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm not trying to get charged with this, you know? And so, yeah, I literally like dipped out of HCMC. Like, I got to get out of here because they know I blew up cars. Then it was like, I felt like I was on the run.
But it's my own car.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to press charges.
I willingly did this. I can remember a lot of specifics, but I can't remember how I got back to my place in Prior Lake, but I did somehow. And then it's like right around that time that I already knew I was going to be having to leave the apartment. And so I tell my parents that I'm kicked out of the apartment, right? And they're like, where's your car? So I tell them my story in the beginning.
We didn't start the fire,
except
I really did it.
Seriously, right? But I was like, okay, no, I can't say that because they're going to, be pissed. So I told them that it did somehow like a wire or something. Like, so I told them that I saw it blow up. That was my story to them. And so, they're like, what are we going to do with her? Because of course they were partly like very, very concerned for my safety. And also like, they didn't need that much psychosis craziness like in their to like just go stay with them or something. They were hesitant to do that, which is understandable as well. They did end up saying that like they'll let me stay with them till I find somewhere to go, but they were giving me like a week. Right. So they did help me like get out of the apartment. And at this time I was still going to the methadone clinic. So then I had to because I blew up my car, I had to get med rides so I had to go from New Prague to Woodbury every morning, which was crazy. Right. But at this time they didn't know that I was using, and I was already using, my dad ended up looking, cause you have to have a lockbox to take your methadone home. My dad looked in my lockbox and found like all my rigs, all my needles. So then they realized that I'm using, which they didn't know, and they immediately were like, absolutely not, like you have to go. I reached out to like my mentor from Teen Challenge. She let me come to the house in Lakeville, but she said that she could only let me stay a night. Like I was just like going along on this like psychotic adventure. Like I felt like I was just like on a roller coaster, but I was like here for it, kind of a thing. Okay. That's how
you had the hairstyle for it. So you might as well.
Oh my gosh, right? So I'm like, all right, so I guess I'm going back out to the street. Took the transit up to Minneapolis. And so now I'm in Minneapolis, and like I'm, not stable in any way. And I'm just trying to use June 2nd, 2023. And so I'm up then in the cities, and within 3 days, right, something horrible happens.
I know I left you on a cliffhanger, but stay tuned. Next Friday is the 5th and final part of our Addiction Unfiltered series. You're going to find out the horrible thing that happened to Emily right after this. You're going to find out the new depths and the new lows that she sinks to, and also the amazing things that God does to pull her up and into the light. Do not miss it, Friday, May 16th. We'll talk soon.